Some people think privacy ends at the property line. For most of my life, I'd believed that if you paid your mortgage, mowed your lawn, and didn't bother anyone, you earned the right to be left alone. But that belief started to crack the morning I found my garage door half open, sunlight pouring across the concrete floor like an accusation. It was early, maybe 6:30. The air was cool, thin with the smell of pine and motor oil. My old pickup sat in the middle, hood up, tools scattered around it from the night before. I thought maybe the wind had caught the door, or I'd left it ajar, until I saw the footprints, small, clean, not mine. They led from the doorway to my workbench, circled it, and stopped near the shelf where I kept a lockbox. I froze, still half in my slippers, listening for any sound in the quiet. Nothing, not a car, not a voice. Just the faint hum of sprinklers starting up across the street. Then I noticed something even worse. A clipboard sitting on top of my toolbox, neatly stacked papers, HOA letterhead, and at the bottom, a name I knew too well. Linda Prescott, HOA president. I remember the way my stomach tightened. Linda was the kind of woman who treated the HOA bylaws like scripture. She was always on the move, clipboard under her arm, lips pursed, her voice that sharp mix of concern and control. She'd fined people for trash cans left out 5 minutes too long. Once she made a family repaint their mailbox because it was a shade too cheerful. But this was different. This was trespassing. I flipped through the papers. Photos of my property, the fence, my truck, even the interior of the garage. Notes in red pen about unapproved mechanical work and visible clutter. I sat there for a minute, pulse pounding, watching sunlight crawl up the wall. There's a kind of anger that doesn't shout. It just burns slow, steady. That's what this was. I went inside, made coffee, and tried to calm down. Maybe she'd gotten confused. Maybe she'd thought it was part of her inspection. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew she'd crossed a line. Later that day I saw her, walking her dog, clipboard in hand, pastel sweater perfectly folded over her shoulders. I stepped outside, waved her down. "Linda," I said, keeping my voice level. "You were in my garage this morning." Her eyes flicked, just for a second. "Excuse me?" "My garage. You left your clipboard." She smiled, tight, polite, like a realtor about to deliver bad news. "Oh, that. Yes, I needed to verify a potential violation." "Nothing personal. Violation," I repeated. "For what?" "Unapproved vehicle maintenance." "We've had complaints." I took a step closer. "And you thought the best way to handle that was to enter my garage?" She didn't flinch. "Our bylaws allow for inspections when a complaint is filed." "Inspections," I said slowly. "Not break-ins." She lifted her chin. "If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be concerned." That's when I knew there wouldn't be reasoning with her. People like Linda don't hear logic. They hear defiance. She turned and walked off, the dog trotting beside her, leash clicking against her ring. I stood there until she disappeared behind a hedge, anger sitting heavy in my chest. That night, I locked every door, every window. Not because I thought she'd come back, but because I finally understood something about power. It's not about rules. It's about who thinks they can get away with breaking them. And Linda thought she could get away with anything. But she was about to learn what it feels like when the door you shouldn't open opens back. I woke up that Saturday morning to the low hum of a leaf blower somewhere down the street. The kind of background noise you get used to after years of suburban life. I made coffee, stepped out onto the driveway, and just took in the stillness of early morning. The sun had barely climbed over the maples. The air was clean. For a moment, everything was fine. Then I saw it, my garage door half open. My heart sank. I knew for a fact I'd locked it the night before. I wasn't the kind of guy who forgot things like that. I froze, listening. No sound. Just the faint rustle of leaves and the buzz of someone's sprinkler 2 houses down. I approached quietly, coffee still in hand. Through the gap under the door, I could see the outline of someone's shoes. Brown loafers. Expensive looking. That's when I spoke. Calm but sharp. "Who's in my garage?" The door creaked. Then it lifted the rest of the way up. And there she was. Marlene, the HOA president. She stood there like she owned the place, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't even flinch when I caught her. She just looked up, adjusted her sunglasses, and said, "Morning, Tom. I needed to verify something about your storage compliance." I stared at her, trying to process that sentence. My what? Storage compliance, she repeated, as if that explained anything. You've been keeping tools and boxes within visible range of the property line. It's against HOA policy. Now my garage isn't visible to anyone, not unless they walk up my driveway, duck under the door, and trespass. Which is exactly what she did. Marlene, you broke into my garage, I said flatly. You can't just walk in here. She frowned, like I was being unreasonable. Don't be dramatic. The door wasn't locked all the way. I only looked for a second. I could feel the heat building behind my eyes. You entered my property without consent. That's trespassing. She shrugged, jotting something down on her clipboard. You should read your HOA agreement, Tom. There's a clause that allows inspection of visible violations. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Visible. From the street, not my garage. You don't have a badge. You don't have authority. You're not law enforcement. For a split second, she hesitated. Then she turned cold again. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to keep the neighborhood in order. I took out my phone and started recording. The moment the camera light came on, she stiffened. What are you doing? She asked. Documenting an HOA president trespassing on private property, I said. She sputtered. That's unnecessary, Tom. You were in my garage. Without permission. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. Her face turned red. You're out of line. I could fine you for non-cooperation, I laughed. Fine me? Go ahead. But this video goes to the sheriff's office first. That's when she dropped the clipboard and tried to reason with me. Her tone softened, her voice wobbling slightly. Tom, let's not escalate this. I'm sure we can handle this internally. But I wasn't backing down. Not after months of her constant notes, her little warnings, her obsession with everyone's business. This was too far. I pointed to the end of the driveway. Leave, now. She stepped back, muttering something about just doing her job. Then she stormed off, high heels clicking against the pavement, muttering loud enough for me to hear. You'll regret this. I watched her walk down the street, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her face still tight with anger. That night, I replayed the footage over and over. Every word, every second of it? My hands trembled a little as I uploaded it to my computer and made a copy, just in case. Then, on Sunday morning, I woke up to something new. A letter taped to my front door, HOA letterhead. It read, Notice of immediate fine, property inspection, non-compliance. You are hereby fined $500 for obstructing HOA inspection procedures and recording an official during administrative duties. They called her trespassing administrative duties. I stood on my porch, reading it twice, feeling that slow, deep burn in my chest. This wasn't just about a garage anymore. This was about principle, about drawing a line between authority and abuse. And that line had been crossed. So I decided to push back, legally, quietly, and in a way Marlene would never forget. I spent the next few days in silence. Not because I was scared, but because I knew what came next had to be done right. No yelling, no confrontation, just proof and process. I started by calling the sheriff's office. I didn't want to make it dramatic. I just told them the truth. The HOA president had entered my garage without permission. I had video evidence, and she'd since issued a retaliatory fine. The deputy on the other end paused for a long moment before saying, Yeah, that's trespassing. You did the right thing recording it. Bring it in. I printed the video stills. One with her standing under the half-open garage door. Another where her clipboard was clearly visible. The timestamp showed 8:42 a.m. That mattered. So did the note she left afterward. Together they told the story without me needing to say much. When I handed everything over at the sheriff's station, the deputy gave me a small, knowing grin. HOA trouble again, he said. You could say that, I replied. He nodded. You'd be surprised how many of these end up here. They filed an incident report that same day. I didn't press charges yet. I wanted to see if she'd dig her hole deeper. And sure enough, she did. 2 days later, she called a special HOA meeting. Everyone in the neighborhood was invited. I showed up, sat near the back, and listened as Marlene painted me as uncooperative and hostile. She even claimed I'd edited footage to misrepresent an inspection. But then she made her mistake. She said on record, Yes, I briefly entered his garage to check for violations. That was all I needed. I stood up, calm as ever, and said, "Thank you, Marlene. I'd like the minutes to reflect that the HOA president just admitted to entering my private property without consent." The room went silent. You could hear someone's bracelet jingling across the table. Marlene's face drained of color. "That's not what I meant," she stammered, but it didn't matter. Everyone had heard her. I took out my phone and opened the sheriff's email, the one confirming the filed report. I read it aloud. Case number 2473, trespass, pending investigation, a few gasps, a few murmurs. The other board members looked uncomfortable. One of them, Mr. Dale, an older man who'd lived there since the neighborhood was built, finally said, "Marlene, you didn't tell us you went into his garage." I was just, "No," he cut her off. "You can't do that." The rest of the meeting unraveled fast. What started as a scolding against me turned into a quiet tribunal against her. Someone suggested a vote of no confidence. Someone else seconded it. By the end of that week, Marlene was suspended pending investigation. The HOA's attorney reached out next. He sounded nervous, polite but cautious. "Mr. Harper, we understand there's been a misunderstanding. We'd like to resolve this amicably." I told him the truth. I'm not after money. I just want written acknowledgement that what she did was illegal, and I want the fine revoked. He agreed within 48 hours. A week later, I received an official letter with the HOA seal. The association acknowledges that an unauthorized entry into the property occurred and that the homeowner, Thomas Harper, acted within his rights. The imposed fine has been rescinded. Future inspections will follow proper notice and consent procedures. At the bottom, in neat ink, was Marlene's signature, required as part of her resignation. I stood there in my driveway, reading it under the morning light. The same spot where I'd caught her weeks earlier, the same sound of sprinklers, the same quiet hum of suburbia, but it felt different now, quieter, freer. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post the video online. I just saved it in a folder titled "For the Record." Sometimes justice doesn't need to make noise. It just needs to stand on its own legs and stay put. The next HOA president, a retired teacher named Evelyn, stopped by one afternoon. She looked around my yard, nodded, and said, "You keep your property clean, Tom. I don't think we'll have any issues." I smiled. "I don't think we will either." And as she walked away, I glanced back at my garage, door wide open, sunlight spilling across the concrete, dust motes floating like tiny specks of peace. For the first time in years, it felt like my home again.